Discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Roundtable.
May 4th marks Youth Day here in China, and to mark the occasion, Roundtable's Yushun had a chance to speak with Alex Lam, a professor of AI from Tsinghua University. The topic, of course, is AI and how young people are responding to the topic these days. Stay tuned for that. Coming to you from our studios in Beijing, this is Roundtable. I'm Steve, and I thank you very much for being with us today. First up, what happens when cutting-edge AI research meets two of the world's most dynamic, innovative ecosystems? Roundtable's Yushun was joined by Alex Lam, assistant professor at the College of AI at Tsinghua University. Having worked across North America and now based here in China, Alex offers a rare insider's view into how the global AI race is really unfolding. They had a fascinating conversation, and here it is.
Today, I am joined by Alex Lam, Assistant Professor at the College of AI, Tsinghua University. And Alex, I know you studied and worked in North America, but can you please also introduce yourself to your listeners?
Thank you. I'm Alex Lam. I grew up in Western Maryland in a town called Mount Airy in the United States. I actually grew up on a dairy farm. I did my undergraduate degree at Johns Hopkins University. Then I spent a few years developing demand forecasting systems at Amazon. And then I did my PhD in deep learning at the University of Montreal. I spent a few years doing reinforcement learning research at Microsoft Research New York City. And now I've been an assistant professor at Tsinghua for almost a year.
And can you tell us what motivated you to come to China and join Tsinghua University? Because we can totally see that that's very hardcore professional background that you got.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, I guess even as a little kid, working in China was something that was interesting to me, and I'm glad I got a good opportunity to do it. I think in terms of why Tsinghua University, I think the quality of the students is really good. And then I think China's strengths in basic economy and industrial production will eventually lead to improvement in the academic system. And I think the Chinese universities are pretty good, and I think they're also improving pretty quickly. And then I guess another thing I'd say is, so at Tsinghua here we have Andrew Yao, and he did most of his education and his academic career in the United States, and he came over to China some number of years ago, and he's built up some departments which are kind of modeled on the U.S. system of academia. So working in one of his departments makes the transition to the Chinese academia a little bit easier.
Yeah, by the way, how long have you been in China? That's half a year or?
8 months.
How do you like so far? The food, the environment, and everything?
It's pretty nice. There's certain things that are quite nice in China, like the high-speed rail makes it easy to get around a lot of different cities. It would be pretty nice if they had more of that in the U.S. I think another really interesting thing I didn't realize about China is it's very easy to get in contact with a person who has responsibility in a particular organization. To be more concrete, if you order a product online, it's very easy to just add someone who actually works at that company on your WeChat, and then they can they're actually a knowledgeable person, and they can help you with the product, or let's say ordering other products. And then also, let's say you go to a hospital in China, or you're walking around a neighborhood, they'll just publicly list the WeChat contact info of, let's say, the local police officer, or the head of, let's say, the local hospital, or the maintenance people responsible for the area. So it's very easy to actually connect with specific people, and that can make it easier to just like work through problems.
Yes, I think the process thing is a lot of these organizations are working on, and some of them all like have the slogan of we hope to help you to complete things in one visit. That is some of the principles that we'll have, no matter it's the like a hospital or tax office and everything. And you've been to China for a while, so you have the experience both in North America and in China. What differences have you noticed between the AI research ecosystems in North America and China?
Well, one thing I'd say is, I guess, like, the number of really strong undergraduates in China is a lot larger than in the United States, even though I'd say, on the whole, the number of really strong professors is higher in the United States. So, I would say overall China is a pretty good place to be a professor or in a more senior position. But I think for younger people, China is somewhat more competitive. Yeah, I guess, there's other aspects to like the AI research ecosystem. I mean, the Chinese are catching up in the development of advanced chips, but currently they still have to import some from the United States. I guess I would also say that China has certain strengths in terms of industrial production. So, a lot of devices, like, I don't know, the robot vacuum, for example, is manufactured in China. So that gives China certain strengths in terms of like developing embodied AI.
Yeah, actually talking about embodied AI, I went to a kind of a company, also factory that actually developing that embodied AI and robots, and they are actually implying or using these robots to do the kind of manufacturing line things. And the things that, of course, we are seeing a lot of these AI and robots developing, but we kind of still need a bunch of time to actually make them into the use of our home, that kind of scenario that we can actually, the daily people, the ordinary people can actually use these AI. And recently we are hearing a lot about AI agents that can act autonomously, right? Like the recent craze about OpenClaw. They can totally just like move your mouse and start a link, use your web browser, and do things for you. Have you used one of these agents now?
Yeah, so I haven't, and to be honest, even though I'm a computer science professor,
Yeah.
I'm not a very quick adopter of new technology in general. But with a lot of my students, they have started to use like LLM and the deep research tools for like paper writing and brainstorming and writing code. So it is coming into my career quite a bit.
And so you notice that some of your students are using these AIs to do their writings, research writings. Do you, like what's your attitude towards that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's useful to speed up the quality or to speed up the rate at which, let's say, you can like brainstorm ideas or you can produce things. But I think it also really raises the bar in terms of quality assurance and verification. So at this point, it's pretty easy for some of the AI systems. I don't know, like Claude, for example, to write a few pages of notes, which are not totally wrong, but not really up to the quality of like a very good researcher. So how you can use these, very cheap, but maybe not totally high quality research explorations well, I think is important.
Of course, they are like for young people as students or young professionals growing up in the age of AI, because yeah, people are calling like the natives in the internet era, right? Some people also worry that relying too much on AI tools might limit their creativity. Of course, you're saying that they can have some notes or ideas from AI, but some people are also concerning about the use of AI may limit their creativity, especially for younger students. And how do you see this balance?
Yeah, I think maybe there's just going to have to be like more deliberate effort, to force yourself to gain some of the basic skills like, how to write, how to come up with the ideas and stuff. I think it'll still happen, but maybe it'll require a little bit more deliberate effort than was required in the past.
And now, as educator yourself, right? And how should education system evolve in response to the phenomena of using AI, do you think?
I guess, I don't know like the ultimate answer to that. As a professor, one of the tricks I've been told about is, okay, when you give homework to your students, they probably could just do it with AI, but one thing you can do is take some of the homework problems and keep that exact same problem on the exam. So at least if the students know how to do the homework problem by themselves, it will give them an advantage in the final exam. So, maybe putting a little bit more emphasis on like the proctoring of result or like proctored exams and stuff. I guess another thing is I think in terms of like research level students, like graduate students, there might be a little bit more emphasis put on like the actual adoption of the method that you produce rather than just having a paper. So, like if AIs get kind of decent at writing like reasonably passable looking papers, it might be the case that for your paper or your work to gain recognition, you want to show that maybe like 1,000 or 10,000 people are actually using your method as opposed to just having a decent looking paper.
And what we can see is that like many these AI systems or AI platforms, they rely on massive data sets, right? But some of your research, if I understood it correctly, explores how models can learn effectively from limited data, right?
Yeah. One thing is, so the amount of high quality text data that actually exists, it's not that large. There's only so many books, there's only so many research papers. An important thing in the future and even now is probably going to be like learning via interaction. So, it makes a lot of sense to me that like if you're interacting in a computer system, if you have some kind of like a self-directed goal, you can actually measure how well you reached your goal. And you can use that to update the model without necessarily having more, I guess, like labeled data. And then I guess another thing is, how you can gain more intelligence from, let's say, like an embodied AI system that's interacting in the world. So like you have your robot moving around, maybe you collect a video and you collect actions. There should be a way of using that data to make the AI system better.
But still, the thing is that, as far as I understood, data collection and learning from data are still major challenges faced by many AI models today because I've interviewed some humanoid robot developers, as I mentioned before, and they told me that one of the biggest challenges in developing real-world applications for humanoid robots is the need for a large amount of data because they need to use the data to train how they can respond, how they can react to the actual world that's surrounding them.
Right. I guess one thing I'd say is, especially like in China, if you go around, I don't know, like in Beijing, it's not that uncommon to have a little stand where they're selling coffee and it's either a humanoid robot or a robotic arm that makes the coffee for you. And at this point, it's maybe kind of a novelty, but it makes a lot of sense to me that if you had a system like that that's deployed, it could try things that are, a little different, but within a safe window. and it can kind of learn more about its environment and become more adept. And then maybe if you use that kind of interaction data along with, some kind of like human demonstration, I think that could be very useful.
And I also checked, I think that's your website, right? You work on the KuroNet project, uses AI to help modern readers understand classical documents. And yeah, I'm actually quite interested in this part. That's mainly about the like ancient or old time text, right? Not about the murals or paintings or anything.
Right. I guess, with China, I haven't thought, I've never done any research on the Chinese historical documents. But one thing that might be interesting is, so my understanding is the oldest, or not the oldest, but one of the older types of the Chinese writing is this seal script writing. And
Oh,
my
yes.
understanding is there's quite a bit of variation in, how the characters can be written with the seal script. So, one thing could be, recognizing the seal script could be interesting. There might also be some interesting technologies in terms of like generating with the seal script, and it could be a fun way of improving engagement with historical documents. It might also be useful because one time I actually saw a Chinese painting and I was kind of interested, I don't know, in buying a replica or another print of it or something. But the name of the author was written in seal script, so I didn't have a way of looking it up. Because that's my understanding is just as an artistic thing, some modern Chinese documents are still signed in the seal script.
Yes, yes. That's kind of a way that the painter or the writer would do at the corner of the piece.
Yeah. Another thing that I would say, is kind of interesting to me is I've been learning, so they have a Chinese language class at Tsinghua, and they tell you how to write the Chinese characters. And when you write them, you have to write the characters in a specific order, like the strokes go in a specific order. And when you look at the stroke order, it tells you about, how the character was developed or like what pieces is it composed of? Because generally characters are composed of multiple characters put together, and something that could just be a matter of intellectual curiosity is understanding better, how the modern character evolved from, let's say, the seal script character, and then the older version of the character, which is like, let's say, the oracle bone character. Because my understanding is a lot of the characters originally they kind of were like a drawing of a thing. So like the character for like a dragon originally is kind of like it really looks like a dragon, but it becomes more stylized over time.
Yeah. And actually, about these kind of ancient writing in China, they also launched many, many projects on digitalizing a lot of these things, including these murals and caves and everything. And I visited Dunhuang, which is also a place that is enriched resource of these murals. A lot of people are saying that digitalizing these things are like because they're kind of contradictory because these are the ancient things and people would like to reserve them in the best way. And another perspective is that we can digitalize everything so that people in the future can also have a better view on them. And then now let's back to the artificial intelligence. Some people are like excited about AI's potential because we are like basically living in the world that is filled with AI right now. I think a lot of people now cannot live without AI. And others worry that this is the phenomenon that is actually the concerning them because it would maybe replace many jobs. And how do you see the relationship between AI and human work evolving? Because you are also seeing many students are using AI, right? And of course, in our daily work, we also need to use a lot of AI.
Yeah, so at least in the field of computer science, I think you're starting to see that so AI already has like a pretty good ability to write code, maybe not quite a human level ability to really understand code. So, what I think you're seeing is the market for like the entry level software developer seems to be getting worse because maybe you have a lot more opportunities for people who are a little bit less skilled to just start writing their own code using AI, which is not, always a bad thing because, it opens up more opportunities for people to produce software. But I think you're also seeing that for very skilled computer scientists or software developers, they're getting more productive and the salaries are increasing a lot. So maybe you're going to eventually get to a point where to be like a competitive, software developer or computer scientist, the expectation is maybe that you actually have to have like a PhD or some kind of specialization. And then maybe the amount of the number of people going in just for undergrad and then going into computer science, that may decrease.
Can I understand it as the way that people are just using AI, people who are good at using AI may still treat it as a tool and it will help boost people's efficiency?
I would say so, but maybe it depends on exactly what your skill level is, because if you're someone who, let's say, really all you know is like just how to write code in a certain language, like just turn an English spec into Python, it might be the case that you actually don't really have any skills that actually go beyond what the AI can do. So it's actually a bit more like you're kind of just replaced.
And since you mentioned the skills, are there any particular skills that will become more valuable in an AI-driven world in your view?
Yeah, I mean, at least in the short to medium term, I feel like it's a really good time to build things or to be an engineer. So I think you can be a lot more productive in terms of writing a lot of code. So it might be a great time to produce new apps and new software. Also, to produce new robots, new embodied AI systems. And then I also think like the value of having like a specialization or having a lot of knowledge in a specific area will give you, something that the AI, generally speaking, won't have. So it would make you more complementary with the AI. In the long run, it's kind of hard to say because I don't see any logical reason to think that AI wouldn't eventually catch up with like all well-defined human capabilities.
Yeah, and many young researchers around the world are interested in entering the AI field because this is such a huge industry right now. And what advice would you give to someone who wants to pursue AI research today?
Yeah, I guess maybe to answer a slightly more general question, I think in terms of like research problems, you can kind of plot them along two axes. So like one axis is like, how popular is an area or how many people are working on it, and then the other axis you can look at is, how popular should it be or like how important or how significant is it. So AI right now, it is very popular. A lot of people are working on it. And it's also the case that a lot of people should be working on it because it is important. And then I think if you want to get into research, the best thing you can do, if you can, is find an area that not a lot of people are working on or that isn't very popular, but something that will be big or that should be very popular. So it's a little bit of an aside, but if you look at where the basic research is on like genomics and like gene editing of humans, it's so far ahead of the number of people who are working on it that I mean it's just I think it just has huge potential as an area to enter as a scientist. But I think right now when you enter AI, it's very competitive, and it helps to be, let's say, very intelligent, or a lot gets dominated by the big labs or the organizations that have a lot of research. So it can still be good to enter AI, but it is becoming a competitive field.
You mentioned a lot in embodied AI. Do you are you working on that, or do you have a plan or project on that?
Yeah, I have been working on it. So, one big area of interest for me is is there a good way of doing self-directed exploration? So, if you just put an embodied AI system into an environment, like you put it into a room, or can it learn to get a good representation of its environment and build a good model of its world system without explicit supervision? So maybe there's some theoretical aspects to that, like what's a principled objective for that. But then just also making it work empirically is something as well.
Awesome. And we've seen some of these embodied AI and robotics to being so human-like in recent days. Actually, some of these, even car manufacturers developing these AI, right? And also we've seen these robots doing that kung fu thing, martial arts things in during the Spring Festival Gala, if you watched it. And I can totally see that now. They are entering a stage that I think ordinary did not expect. But can you also maybe predict or expect that how long will these AI to be actually in our home and maybe helping our daily stuff and chores and everything?
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of an interesting question. I mean, it might be a little creepy to have a humanoid robot, walking around your
Yeah,
house. I mean,
exactly.
I have a robot vacuum, and I like it. I mean, one thing you could do is if you give it an arm, it could also maybe do my laundry. It could do some dusting. It could do some folding. I think that could happen reasonably soon. I've never tried it or anything, but I've heard that I think the Chinese company Honor has a phone where the camera is somewhat autonomous, like it can kind of move on a little arm. I don't know if you've heard
Yeah,
about that at all. I think they
yeah, I
call it
heard, heard.
robot phone. I was also going to say with the Chinese those coffee stands where it's a robot that makes your coffee. The ones that I've used right now, I would say they're not great, but I think they'll get better pretty quickly. And then also, if you go to a hotel in China, most of the time there is a little robot that does
Moving around, delivering or a takeout.
yeah, yeah, that's right. So that's already very common, and I could imagine if it also gains capabilities to do some of the cleaning and stuff, that could also make a lot of sense. And I don't know that much about how it works, but I don't know if you've been to a high-speed rail station recently, but I think they have some patrol robots. I don't know if robot is the right word because it's more like a little car that goes around. But yeah, I think you'll see more of these popping up very quickly. I think at least the ability to do certain things like let's say fold your laundry or make coffee for you. I think that's already possible.